Hi, this is Paul Hughes from Blog of Holding, and you're listening to Morris's unofficial tabletop RPG talk.
This week, Morrus and Peter are joined by Steve Wieck, CEO of OneBookShelf and DriveThruRPG, to talk about the business of digital RPG sales. In the news, Dungeons & Dragons has its 7th straight year of growth. Benedict Cumberbatch reads a Drizzt lullaby. A possible plot leak for the Dungeons & Dragons movie that may or may not be accurate. New Critical Role miniatures, and more. This week on Morris's unofficial tabletop RPG talk.
The Imperial Opera House is this week's sponsor. Get yourself down there and listen to people warble and screech their way through obscure foreign languages, achieving notes never intended for human consumption. You are guaranteed not to understand a thing, but they do sell nice ice creams at the interval. Wait, what? They don't sell ice creams? What sort of outfit are they running there?
All the tabletop role-playing news, we aim to amuse and we aim to enthuse. And Morris's unofficial tabletop RPG.
Hello, and welcome to Morris's unofficial tabletop RPG talk. I am Russ, aka Morrus, or Morrus, aka Russ, and with me this week is...
Peter Coffey from the Southampton Guild of Roleplayers. Russ, I am completely, ecstatically excited to be here.
Would you like to guess who our guest is this week, Peter?
Well, that is why I'm excited and ecstatic to be here. It is the person who's responsible for DriveThruRPG.
Yes! Yeah, so Steve Wieck, who people may know from White Wolf many years ago. I think we're talking over 2 decades now. I think you were involved with White Wolf, was it, Steve?
That's right, yep.
Then for the last 2 decades, DriveThruRPG. So how are you, Steve? Welcome.
I'm great. It's awfully early here, but I'm feeling very cheerful. And I've got my engine of coffee, my fueled engine. So, doing a little subliminal placement there for you, Russ, too.
We thank you for getting up this time in the morning.
Yeah,
Let's do some RPG news, shall we?
Yeah.
A brilliant plan. We should.
Let's start with some really awesome RPG news, because you remember we had Eugenio Vargas from Into the Motherlands on the show last November, I want to say?
Yeah, that sounds
6
right.
months ago, round about.
And he was that Kickstarter got going.
Yeah, well, that's the thing.
Nice.
He was talking to us about it all that time ago.
Yes,
but this week the Kickstarter has actually launched.
Doing quite well too, isn't it?
Yeah. It shot past 100k in the first day, I think.
That's pretty good.
Over 150, if I recall correctly. But yeah, it's a lot of money. And bloody well played. Yeah,
it looks gorgeous as well, doesn't it?
It looks fantastic.
Yes.
Yeah, I backed it first day. I couldn't not back that one.
Yeah.
Well, of course not. Like this podcast just costs you so much money.
It has. It is unfortunately one of the dangers of this podcast. It's every week. It's some Kickstarter or something. But anyway, it looks gorgeous. So just for the people who aren't familiar with it, it's basically if you take 1,000 years before Europeans travel to the New World.
Musa Mansa, like the king that single-handedly broke the economy of the Mediterranean by like, gold, here, you have some gold, you got some gold, and you over there, here, bigger, have some gold. Yeah. And it's like, well, gold is now worthless. Yeah. Because they just bought so much of it.
So you have African explorers travelling to the New World 1,000 years before Europeans. But on the way there, they don't make it to the New World because they get transported to a different planet. And then this entire planet is developed in a civilization, sort of a civilization where the sort of African ancestry develops on this planet. And then the whole game is set there. So it's like a sci-fi, futuristic, African-centered setting.
Yes.
And it looks awesome.
It looks awesome.
It does look awesome. So it's on Kickstarter now, and you can back it right now. I have done $50, I think, for the hardcover. I backed. Mm-hmm. Or you can get $25 for the for the what do you call it? What are those things you sell, Steve? Those electronic things.
PDFs.
PDFs. 25 for the PDF.
I thought the game. I mean, I'm only looking at what's available from the Kickstarter, but it looks like they have some pretty novel takes on. I mean, you get your science fiction experience, but they have some pretty novel takes on things.
Yeah. There's a class. I think they call it a profession called the Spine Ripper.
Yeah.
Which sounds kind of fun. And then they've got bio priests and
Oh, doubtless a healer, I'm sure.
Yeah. But definite back from me. I've got it. So, let's jump into some D&D. So D&D, I think it's probably going to take up most of the news this week. So, first of all, they sent out a press release earlier in the week, which they sent out a similar one last year about all the sort of demographics and sales over the last year, with all these gorgeous, pretty graphs and pie charts and stuff. So they confirmed that 2020 was the best year ever. I mean, they say that every year. Every year they have the best year ever. They're just growing
it's a very
constantly.
Controversial statement that 2020 was the best year ever.
What did you say?
Oh,
More
right.
specifically.
Best year ever for D&D. Oh, okay.
Yes. Let's qualify that.
2020 was both the worst year ever and the best year ever.
Quote for D&D sounds. All right, carry on. Yeah.
But that was expected. But some of the demographics are really interesting. So the over 40s are now only, I think it's only about 13% of the or was it 45 and over? Is 13% of the entire player base, and the player base is like 50 million people now worldwide. It's enormous. Amazing. It's a lot of people. I mean, that's a country. That's a small country, isn't it?
It's 50 million people that we know about, for certain, pretty much.
Well, I know all of those 50 million people personally, obviously, but there might be some others that I don't know yet.
I kind of wish I could go back to my 1996 self, where everybody in the industry was fretting about computer games coming in and the tabletop hobby going away, and it'd end up being just a bunch of old people at the retirement homes playing their D&D game, and that was it. And here everything's inverted. So
it just goes to show you just cannot predict this stuff.
No.
Because I think these massive game-changing things just happen, don't they? And 5th edition was, I mean, we talked about this so many times on the podcast before, we're just repeating ourselves, but 5th edition was, perfectly designed for the time. Streaming became big at exactly the right time. Which meant that the player base started to get younger and younger, and new players were coming into the hobby in droves.
I think it's also just the resilience of the hobby. I mean, as an art form, it's just, I mean, we love it for a reason, and there's no reason to think that the new generations don't love it as well for the same reason.
It definitely seems to be the case.
People like telling stories. Yeah. People like telling stories, and this is a great way to facilitate getting together with friends and telling stories. And stories where you get to be the heroes, and quite frankly, that is a really cool way to go about it.
Wait a second, let me call up those actual graphs and the pie charts, actually, because there was some more information than that. That wasn't all of it. Where are we?
Well, pie charts and graphs obviously are the best podcast media.
Well, I can read them out aloud.
Ooh, look how round it is.
So, Ray Winninger, who's the executive producer for D&D over at Wizards, there's this quote from him. It starts off with this quote from him, and it says, well, even though they don't have the exact numbers from the TSR years, they can safely say D&D is more popular now than it has ever been in the whole sort of 50 years it's been around. 47 years, whatever, 50 years.
Nice. Yeah, makes sense.
So 47 years is been growing year on year globally for the 7th consecutive year in a row now. Yeah. Which is amazing. I mean, that's got to stop.
Defies the usual edition cycle that people are kind of used to in the RPG hobby.
Yeah. I mean, it'd be awesome if it just kept going, and then, tabletop RPGs just became as popular as video games. That would be amazing.
I'd be okay with that.
Possible.
Yeah, I'd be fine with that too.
I'd be very interested in that. It's, I think the interesting thing is going to be, are tabletop games going to break into VR and augmented reality?
I can see augmented reality definitely happening. VR maybe not so much. That's more of just a video game then at that point, isn't it? But augmented reality for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some of that out there now already.
Yeah. I mean, and don't forget you got stuff like the Barsoom Project and Dream Park by Larry Niven and I think David Flynn, which essentially is live action role playing, but using a very tabletop metaphor, but using virtual reality and enhanced augmented reality. And that was going 1980s? So, there's a lot of possibilities out there.
So I'm looking at the demographics here. So let's start with 60% male, 40% female, which is awesome, Under 1% other or non-binary.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that they're even counting that is definitely an important thing that is actually there on the graph.
Right.
Progress.
And I imagine some of that will probably grow because some people don't like to answer those sort of things on surveys, do they? I think.
Yeah, it's like a lot of people don't think it's any other company's business.
Yeah. So that might be a figure that grows over time.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then looking at the ages, so 40%, 40 plus 13%. Mm-hmm. So that's us. Mm-hmm. We're in the 13%. Except for me, I'm 25.
That's fair.
That's you two.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
13%. So the biggest group is 20 to 24 with 24%.
That's a pretty narrow age range then, 20 to 24.
Yeah. Well, it's like all of these are all like 4-year age ranges up until you get to 40, and then 40 is just like a 50-year age range.
Yeah. Well, from a demographic analysis, I suppose someone who's 20 is much different than someone who's 16 and in high school.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. That's true. They don't go below 15, but I assume there's kind of legal reasons for that.
Probably.
You can't really sort of. You probably can't survey kids, I imagine. Question. I would have thought. Yeah.
Or maybe they just don't fill in the surveys. Who knows?
Well, there's that too, I guess. But yeah, so what this basically shows is the hobby is growing. It's growing with young people. It's growing. Yeah. It's not just sort of middle-aged men. Well, it hasn't been for a long time.
Right.
Yes.
Anymore.
Thank you.
And the stats are really, really reflecting that.
Yeah.
Like, I've got nothing against middle-aged men. Some of my best friends are middle-aged men.
Well, you are ones. Yeah.
It's nice to see some fresh faces.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, anecdotally, as I talk to a lot of people in the business and industry of role-playing games, there's just a lot more people who have started gaming with 5th edition experience they've ever had with it.
Yeah.
I think it's incredibly exciting. I mean, people like the team behind Into the Motherlands are just going to bring fresh ideas and experiences that are completely beyond what I know. And that's really exciting for me. It's like literally unknown territory.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going, but I'm excited to see it. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah. Well, I just like the idea of like the hobby getting big enough and diverse enough that there's so much of this stuff that you can dive into that's completely outside your own personal sort of living experience.
Preference. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And I just think that's definitely a sign of a healthy hobby, I think.
Yeah. I mean, worlds of imagination. I think somebody said a couple of years ago that due to J.R.R. Tolkien, we have generic elves. And if you think about it, that's kind of mind-blowing. It's like, an elf, a fantasy creation, and we now have ones which are generic. Because everyone knows exactly what an elf is, because it's just become so embedded in the culture. So finding things which there are new tropes which in 10 years' time we will take for granted and which have not yet been thought of. And that's exciting for me. What can I say?
Yeah. Hey, so have you guys seen this Drizzt short animated video narrated by Benedict Cumberbatch?
I have. Yes,
released yesterday.
I quite enjoyed it. I thought it was quite well done.
It was quite. Have you seen it, Peter?
No. This is brand new sentence territory for me.
Really? Oh, okay. I thought I wanted to.
Animated video with Drizzt and narrated by Benedict Cumberbatch.
Yes. So it dropped.
Okay, I'm here for it. Let's go.
Was it yesterday? It dropped or the day before? Yesterday, I think it was.
Just yesterday, yeah.
Yeah. So it's about 5 minutes long, and it's written by R.A. Salvatore.
Yes.
Whose online store has the best URL ever. Salva Store. It's amazing.
That's awesome. Yeah.
But anyway, it's written by him, and basically it's kind of like a lullaby / poem being narrated by Benedict Cumberbatch, while you get these animated images of Drizzt as a baby and of Menzo Baranzan, which apparently isn't. I saw this interview with Salvatore, and that's not how you pronounce Menzo Baranzan. That's how I've said it all my life, but apparently that's not it.
Yeah,
I can't remember what he said now. But images of that and the Spider Queen and the Drow, and then images of Drizzt as he comes to the surface in Icewind Dale, and images of his companions, Bruna and I've forgotten their names now. Wolfgar and the cat.
Gwynarva or something like that.
It is gorgeous, though.
It's gorgeous, and of course Benedict does a phenomenal job, and Bob already wrote the thing himself, so it's really well done.
I kind of wonder, like, Benedict Cumberbatch, like, his voice is amazing in it.
Yes.
But when he was given that script, like, his agent probably approached him and said, well, someone wants you to read this 5-minute poem. Mm-hmm. When he first, I wonder if he had any idea what it was he was reading. I mean, he might be a big D&D fan for all I know, but...
Well, exactly.
It could well be, yeah.
Probably.
So I have a theory. So, there's that D&D TV show they've been teasing. They haven't been teasing. It's just like little bits of information have been sort of leaking out about it. But nobody really knows that much about it yet.
No.
But I've been gathering together all the information I could find about this TV show. And I think it's going to be about Drizzt. I don't know this. Honestly, I have no inside information. This is completely my theory based on a bunch of information that I kind of...
Old-fashioned detective work. Yeah.
So I'm going to run through what... Right. And then you can tell me at the end whether it sounds right, whether the evidence is compelling. So the writer, Derek Kolstad, who wrote John Wick.
Okay.
So if it is about Drizzt, I feel bad for the cat. It opens and someone kills Drizzt Panther.
You can't kill the
and the whole thing is just this revenge story.
Go on with it.
Anyway. It's going to be 6 to 10 serialized episodes.
Yeah.
It's a work in progress. It's as yet untitled. So all this came from an interview ages ago on Collider with Derek Kolstad. So Wizards has just launched a Summer of Drizzt PR campaign where, they're talking about toys and animated shorts and Magic the Gathering cards and Funko Pops and novels and statues. So there's a crap load of Drizzt stuff coming out this summer.
Yes.
Just tons and tons of it. The press release that came with the animated short, I'm going to read a quote from it. It says, a live-action TV show is in development with E1 Entertainment. And also, although not focused on Drizzt, a movie set in the Forgotten Realms starring blah, blah, blah. So they clearly stated that the movie isn't focused on Drizzt. Mm-hmm. But the TV show, why did they even mention that in that context?
I like the way Russ got all this information and put it on a pinboard for us to see. Well, you're looking very excited.
I've got these pictures and these bits of string and everything. Yeah.
Psychotic detective billboard. And, so there might be a hole in the theory, though, because who would then star as Drizzt?
Well, that I don't know, because it's live action; it's not animated. So, I don't know. They can find somebody. Somebody could star as Drizzt.
But the cast that's been announced, I don't think any of them.
Oh, that's the movie, though. That's the movie.
Oh, that's right. What am I thinking? I'm mixing it up.
Yeah. So I don't know.
Well, there's more compelling evidence. So Comic Book asked Wizards of the Coast directly.
Yes.
And their reply was, the upcoming D&D movie is not focused on Drizzt, but there is a TV show in development that might be.
Oh, that's really
compelling.
That is compelling.
No, I'm listening.
And then finally, we already know that the TV show was confirmed by the writer to be set in the Underdark.
Oh.
He confirmed that last year.
You should probably have led off with that. That would have helped.
Well, I was like leaving the most compelling evidence till last so we could build up to it.
You buried the lead a little there.
So, I mean, yeah.
That would be a very compelling thing to adapt to the screen.
I think so, yeah.
Those first books, so, yeah.
Because they've also said
the Crystal Shard. That would be quite kind of amazing.
Well, I'm thinking maybe if it's set in the Underdark, it's mainly going to be like the origin story.
I would think so.
The trilogy of books before that.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I'm going to guess.
Yeah, I suppose it would.
So Drizzt growing up in the Drow Society.
Right.
Okay, maybe that could work. Because I know that the latest
season 1 ends with him.
Yeah. Like all the Adventurers League stuff that's been around the Realm of the Frost Maiden has been very focused on the Crystal Tower. It's like a repeated plot point that I have been hammered with every time I've opened the modules. Like, okay, I get it. Crystal Tower. Gotcha. So, yeah, interesting.
Yeah. So, what do you reckon? Is it Drizzt? Based on that information, would you bet?
Gotta be.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Oh, I'd definitely put a tenner down. Yeah.
I would. Yeah. I'm sure enough that I would actually bet on that now. Yeah.
Fantastic.
All right. Okay. So
then I'm going to be interested to see cast announcements.
Oh.
Yeah. I don't know how far along that is.
Right.
because they're doing their big Summer of Drizzt right now.
Right.
And there's definitely no way that TV show is going to launch this year.
No.
So
but they might do some announcements.
Yeah, maybe.
Well, we shall have to wait. Well, there'll probably be like a teaser for the trailer for the announcement. Yeah. You got to think about these things.
Oh, yeah. So, going on to the D&D movie, which we mentioned a little bit. So, there's someone on Twitter, someone called the PiePass0, catchy name, did a search on the US copyright website.
Oh, yeah, that's it.
And searched for Paramount Pictures and copyrights that they've been registering. And they're the people behind the movie. And discovered what appears to be a synopsis for the D&D movie.
Ooh.
But then Screen Rant reported on the story and has then since posted that Screen Rant has confirmed that the synopsis is not accurate. But I'm going to read out the synopsis anyway.
Right.
So you know what it was. But
this is what it isn't.
Well, Screen Rant hasn't said how they know it's not accurate.
Yeah.
All they've literally just said, they've confirmed that the movie synopsis is not accurate, but they haven't said who they asked, where they got that from, or I don't know. So I'll read it out anyway, and then.
Okay.
So we know it's got Chris Pine in it, and who else has it got?
Justice
Smith, Michelle Rodriguez, Hugh Grant is the bad guy, Reggae Jean Page from Bridgerton, and more people. So this is the apparent synopsis. An ex-harper turned thief escapes from prison with his partner, a female barbarian, and reunites with a no-talent wizard and a druid new to their team in an effort to rob the cheating con man who stole all their loot from this is all one sentence, by the way, from the heist that landed them behind bars and used it to install himself as the Lord of Neverwinter. Only the traitor is allied with a powerful red wizard who has something far more sinister in store. So it's a heist. It's a heist movie. A D&D heist movie.
Yeah. I mean, I gotta say, I'm sort of open for this movie. Like, if they want to make that movie, heist movie, it's quite a compelling thing. It's like getting the old the Forgotten Realms Secret Services involved. We're throwing a heist. You've got a barbarian, and let's face it, like any movie which involves like someone sneaky and a barbarian is just going to. It's going to have like that sort of odd couple chemistry, which just drives a lot of films. So
Problem is we don't know. We don't even know if it's real now because Screen Rant says it's not. So
they've cast doubt on it. In that plot synopsis, though, if you had Hugh Grant, he was great in The Gentleman. Very different, new kind of role for him in my experience.
He's actually been playing. He hasn't played like the bumbling, charming type for like 20. He's 60 now. He hasn't done it for a long time. He's
now. Is he a Lord Neverwinter or is he Red Wizard?
But he could be the villain here, the conniving con man. He'd be a compelling.
Yeah, I mean, he's been playing villains for like over a decade now, maybe 20 years now. But yeah, he's been doing it for a long time. I think he's actually a much stronger and more varied act. And in Paddington 2, he was a villain as well, which you may not have seen. It might not be in a movie targeted towards you, but he was.
I have seen Paddington 2. I'm just struggling to recall that Hugh Grant was in it.
Oh, okay, well, he was.
But I remember there was Paddington in it. Pretty sure. And it was like Paddington went to jail. Yes, that is what I'm thinking of. Yeah. But yeah, he's probably maybe he's doing voice acting. That would probably be why I have no idea what you're talking about. Anyway, maybe no.
Right, anyway, let's move on because we are half an hour in and we've still got more news to cover.
What?
So much news this week. Paizo is not going to Gen Con this year.
Okay.
Which is not surprising. I think quite a lot of people are not going to Gen Con this year. I'm not going. Are you guys having a presence there this year, Steve?
It's going to vary, but I'm here in Canada, and the vaccine rollout's been much slower than the US or UK. So
possibly not.
We still have quite a few border controls, and so I have to wait and see. But it looks unlikely.
Yeah, I mean, for me,
but I'll be there. Some of our staff will go. For
me, I'm too nervous to go into a big convention like that. Yeah,
exactly.
Next year maybe. We'll see.
We'll have the Gen Con variant next.
Yes.
No, but it's great that they are holding it. They're taking a lot of precautions, and
that's good.
And if we don't go, I'd still want to look at how we can support the show. And as Paizo already announced, they'll be back in a big way next year.
Yeah.
And we'd certainly...
2022 is going to be massive, yeah.
But there is a Gen Con Online element to it, which they're promoting quite heavily. And Paizo, in this announcement, has also said, you know, they're going to be participating fully on that with seminars and game streams and, you know. So that's the alternative way of doing it this year. Right, so Critical Role miniatures.
Yes.
WizKids announced an update to their miniature set based on Critical Role. So these are pre-primed, unpainted miniatures.
Okay.
So there were 3 monster multi-packs.
Ooh.
A core spawn emissary and a seer with 2 monsters, and core spawn crawlers and husk zombies.
Sounds fun.
They sound fun. And then, I mean, I don't really know Critical Role all that well. These are just words to me, unfortunately. But
are the models pretty, Russ? Are the models pretty?
Yes,
that's what we need to know.
the models are pretty. They're gorgeous.
Okay.
They look cool.
Good.
They are Gloomstalkers, Aeon Reversers, Shadow Priests, and Aeon Nullifiers, and Swavain Basilisks. There we go.
Wow.
Fantasy words. So great.
You painted the pitch. So I guess there's one that looks a bit like an angry chicken. Is that right?
Yeah. I guess.
There we go. Excellent.
They do look really nice. Yeah. So if you're a Critical Role fan and you're looking for some more miniatures, yes, you can't go wrong there. Yeah.
Right.
I think we may be coming towards the end of the news. Finally. Quite a long news segment.
Well, we've had no news for about 2 weeks, which is a bit of a drawback. Don't mind telling you, Steve, in an RPG podcast.
Yeah. Oh, I've got some news. I nearly forgot my own news.
Oh yeah. Is it about the Awfully Cheerful engine?
Yeah. So the Awfully Cheerful engine launched on Kickstarter this week. It's launched on Tuesday, and I've been doing 2-week Kickstarters for about a year now, the mini ones. This is the first proper traditional month-long one I've done in a year. So it's actually a bit weird going back to a traditional month-long Kickstarter instead of these mini quick starters. I'm kind of not used to it. At this point in the Kickstarter, I'd already be thinking about the end of it. Right. Just starting. I've got a whole month of this.
Yeah. Well, I see that you've already beat the target. That was day one sort of business.
Yeah. So I'm appearing on Shane Stack's podcast tomorrow. And I've got 2 more podcasts booked in over the next 2 weeks and a whole bunch of interviews. So once those are out in the open, and probably next week, I'll point people in the show notes towards those. But yeah, it's doing really, really well. So if you want to bust some ghosts or hunt some ancient artifacts or punch Nazis or travel in time or travel in a spaceship or whatever, grab the Awfully Cheerful engine, and it's one-shot action comedy adventures.
Well, don't just take Russ's mad babbling from his pulpit for this. There's actually an actual play that has been recorded using the incredibly talented Ian Wold team.
Oh, did you watch it?
Yeah.
It's my the first ever game I've ever run that's actually been videoed and recorded and that the public is able to see. So.
How did that go?
I think it went all right. It was a bit weird. You definitely, when you're being recorded, you definitely act differently to when you're at home running it, for your friends, because you're trying to make sure there's no off-topic chatter. You're trying to stay focused the entire time. It is different, but I think it went well.
Yeah, it was a solid hour, and to be fair, that's exactly how long you should be playing to run an Awfully Cheerful engine game for.
Yeah, so I think it's something I do more of. I enjoyed it, which I wasn't sure I would, but I quite enjoyed it. So
I just started a new D&D campaign, and one of the players asked, "Well, should we be recording this?" And and then we had a bit of discussion about how it might change the way we actually play the game. Then,
so I think it upped my game a little.
Yeah,
not that I magically became talented or anything, but it kept me more focused and on track. And
kept everyone more focused on keeping things going in the game, did it?
Yeah, and I think it keeps your energy higher because it's an event.
Right. As an audience.
Yeah. So your energy stays, because, when I'm running a 4-hour game with my friends, my energy is going to wax and wane over that 4 hours.
Yes.
Of course, yeah.
But if you're running it on camera, it's a little different. It's...
Oh, yeah, a bit of adrenaline.
Yeah.
like a little bit of terror.
Existential terror. Yeah.
It's important for us not to think about how big your tongue is. That's my key tip for you next time you're doing all these actual play podcasts.
Yeah, just something I've never thought about in my life now, and now you put it in my head. It's gonna be
insidious.
Yes.
Helping.
Yeah. Right. Anyway, I think we finished the news. So I think that's it. And so if you can think of any
Awfully
news.
Cheerful Engine looks good, Russ. I have to say.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's the kind of system that I think has a lot of. I like a bit of a lighter system. I like the action. I like the comedy. All of those go well together, and it's great for.
It fills a market niche quite nicely, I think. It's aimed at you want something light, you want something frilly, fluffy, and you want it to fit in between other things you're doing. Yeah. And that interstitial role-playing game is kind of a big deal because not everything should, I would say, be a 14-month-long D&D campaign.
No, exactly. And I find over my time playing that the games that I gravitate towards in between larger campaigns, especially, as you're saying, Peter, are the ones that are a little bit lighter and more narrative. And
especially things that you can pick up and do a one-shot with.
Exactly.
Take risks and be silly and just try out those joke characters that you would never normally want to play, because if someone's telling you the same joke every hour for 4 hours for every week for a year, that joke had better be a really good one, which it rarely is. But if you're doing it just for an evening, then actually it's quite funny. So I think it's got a lot. I think these sort of short games have a lot of value, which is why there are so many of them, because they're fun and they're easy.
Right. That is the news.
It's time to play our favourite game. It's time to play the game. Our favourite game in all the world. Guess the Kickstarter from just the name.
Shall we play our favourite game in all the world? The game where I read out the name of a Kickstarter and you try and guess what it is from just the name.
I mean, I wouldn't normally quibble about such things, but I can't help but notice that Steve does have a website devoted entirely to Kickstarters.
Well, yeah, but he gets them after they've kickstarted.
Yes,
so,
exactly.
So he's on a 3-month time shift.
That's right.
Right. Okay.
It'll be the game will have played itself out by the time we see them.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Who would like to go first?
Oh, I think Peter should definitely go first.
No, that's okay. Yeah.
Okay.
So, hit me. What you got?
Okay, you're going to like this one, Peter, if you don't already know what it is. Magical Kitties Level Up.
That sounds very exciting.
It's definitely in your wheelhouse, isn't it, cats?
Yeah, sure, why not? Okay, so Magical Kitties Level Up. I think, based on, I don't know what I've been working on since last August, that this is going to be an improved version of what I can only assume to be the original Magical Kitties game. Which I guess you're a cat who is magic, and I guess you're trying to help your owners? Yeah, your owners have problems, you're a cat, you're trying to save them. I'm going to go against the grain and say it's not for D&D 5th edition. It's probably an original system.
Yeah, I mean that's
high risk plays, man. That's what I'm
about. You were familiar with the original, so you kind of already knew this one. But yeah, it's exactly that. So it's a kind of a reprint with additional new adventures of Magical Kitty Save the Day.
Fantastic.
So there was a deluxe edition, Magical Kitty Save the Day Deluxe Edition. So they've reprinted that, added new adventures. That's from Atlas Games. And yeah, you play as a kitten. Your cat has a human, and that human has a problem, and you have to solve it using magical kitten powers.
Awesome.
Yeah,
is the human like a bumbling fool that needs
almost
your guidance as a cat?
It
seems to be how all cats regard their owners.
I think from a cat's point of view, that is exactly what we are.
Yeah.
Can't see in the dark, just clumps around everywhere, can't even catch their own food. That's why they have to keep on bringing these sort of partially alive mice in to teach you how to hunt properly.
Anyway, Peter, I'll give you 7 points out of 10 for that.
Woo.
Well done. So, Steve, are you ready?
Probably not, but let's do it.
You can do it, I believe.
So, what is necrobiotic?
Oh, necrobiotic.
These one-word ones are hard, to be fair.
Yes. Could go several directions. Well, biotic sounds more cyberpunk, sort of. And necro, you've got necromancy, so you'd have to be dealing with corpses brought back through technology. So I'd have to say probably near future. A little bit of cyberpunk feel with necromancy. The world would probably be a bit dystopian, more than a little dystopian. I'd say you probably play someone brought back to life, probably not of your own volition. So you've got some master issues to cast off, and it'd be a system that... Would it use 5e? That was the question. I'm going to go with a no.
That is always the question.
I'm going to go with no. It'd be its own thing.
Well, that is... You sure you haven't seen this?
I think I saw a key piece of art for it, which looked amazing. Reminded me of Into the Abyss, which is a nice anime.
Well, you're pretty stellar. Much spot on. So, so the world's collapsed and the population's fallen to 5% of the current level.
That is pretty dystopian.
And so humanity has to animate the dead as a workforce.
Oh, that's novel. That's quite nice.
So this is a translation of an Italian game. So it already existed. So this is an English translation of an Italian game. And it's set in a future Florence in Italy.
Yeah. Ah. Well, wasn't Shannon looking at that when they came on?
He mentioned that he'd interviewed them, I think. Yeah. This is from Penny for a Tale. Steve, pretty much spot on. I'm going to have to give you 1,000 points for that. Well done.
1,000?
1,000 points.
Yeah.
I mean, you were so accurate.
Very generous. I didn't get some of that. That was great.
All right.
The French Italian games, why is it the European games look so beautiful all the time?
Yeah, we were talking about that last week, especially the Scandinavian ones as well. The Swedish ones are lovely. And that French company, I forgot its name last week, and I've forgotten it again this week. Agate Editions.
Yeah.
Who do what's the name of their product line?
Esteren.
Shadows of Esteren. Yes, that's it. Yeah, that's the one. Those books are just beautiful books.
Yes.
I digress.
Yes.
It's okay. It's the nature of the podcast. Dungeons and Digressions would be what we'd call it if that wasn't already taken by someone else. Anyway,
okay. So, Peter, are you ready?
Yes, hit me. What have you got?
This is another one-worder, I'm afraid.
Marvellous.
Crescent.
To
be fair, it's crescent colon something, and after the colon bit tells you exactly what it is. So I can only give you the first word.
I think this is a medieval Arabic setting, which is looking at following the crescent, as in the crescent moon. So I guess it's maybe it's got like a bit of Islamic role-playing sort of vibe to it, or so certainly like Middle East, Near East sort of flavour to it, and you're looking at that sort of thing. Gives you the chance to explore things like Saladin Ahmed's Throne of the Crescent Moon, and that sort of like ghouls and genies and all sorts of good stuff like that. That's what I'm hoping for. What is it?
Well, that is as good a guess as any, given that one word. I mean, it could have gone in a million different directions, and that would be awesome. It's not that. That would be awesome.
Fair enough.
What it actually is a nautical fantasy role-playing game. So it's crescent colon nautical fantasy. Okay. So if I'd read out the entire thing, you'd have got it. So basically, it's set in this sort of, crescent of islands. And there's a mysterious magic in each island, and you set off the maps and you explore these different islands, and
so sort of an episodic thing, island to island hopping.
Yeah, so it's like a low
Star
fantasy
Trek Enterprise
game.
Going to a new planet every episode.
Yeah. So it's a low fantasy.
I suppose Archipelago was already taken A.
It's a low fantasy. There's magic is like uncontrolled and mysterious. And it says it's got a richly detailed and unique world setting with time as a central theme, where all mortals die at 100 years of age due to a blight known as the Century Curse, which doesn't actually sound that bad if everyone dies at 100 years of age.
Go to 100.
That's kind of a big improvement on what we've actually got right now.
especially this past year.
Yeah.
Oh no, yeah.
Then again, it would suck being 99, knowing that you're dying at 100.
I suppose.
But I guess you've got...
But, like, it gives you a year to get your affairs in order, so you've got that going for you.
Yeah, so no points there, Peter, but your guess was a good guess. I mean, I liked your guess.
People should listen to this podcast just to mine ideas from Peter.
I think, they're absolutely welcome to my ideas. So as long as you don't expect me to actually doing hard work in making the games, you can have all the ideas you like.
Right, final one then. Final one for Steve. Let's go with, I've got a couple here to choose from. I'm going to go with Garden of the Giants.
Garden of the Giants.
Nice.
Wow. Okay.
Evocative.
It is evocative. I'm going to, well, it's two directions. You can go, I'm going to go a little bit higher risk here and go with the sci-fi thing. The Giants are more like mecha. And garden would mean that probably you're rediscovering technology, so you're rediscovering this like repository or field of giant mecha, and of course that means you've got to investigate them, pilot the mecha, save the Earth. Against probably the typical alien menace that you have to fight back with.
So it's like Pacific Rim sort of thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Completely wrong.
Completely wrong. Completely wrong.
But it sounds cool. I would definitely play that game.
So what this is it is literally a garden.
Okay.
And you play, this garden has been abandoned by its original inhabitants and left up to their own devices. All the small animals, like the mice and the rabbits and all the small animals in the garden have gained sentience and developed their own culture inside this isolated walled garden.
I see. I thought it was just something that happened inside fridges.
Is there a monster called Ripley that plagues the garden?
Probably, yeah.
The terror that stalks in the night.
Yeah. So you get 14 different scenarios to play and 20 different plots. And it's tales similar to that stuff you would find in like children's literature. So you
14 different plots.
Yeah.
There's a pun there waiting to happen. Is it a garden?
Somewhere.
Yes. See what you've been allotted.
Yeah. That's all right. That's cool.
Yeah.
There seems to be a number of games. Wasn't there a game you discussed, maybe even just last week or something with Shannon, that was something about familiars, where you're actually playing the familiar?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. There was the 5e conversions.
Yes,
play familiars.
Now this week there's two different ones where you're playing the kitten or the garden creature. So it seems to be a recurring...
Small animals seems to be a popular thing right now. Ooh.
Pets that support the zeitgeist.
Maybe I should get in on that quickly before the fad wears off.
Well, yeah, you'll have to wait till... I mean, it sounds like the perfect expansion for the Awfully Cheerful engine, where you could play your minions and sidekicks and be extra cute and fluffy.
It's not a bad idea.
Yeah,
I'm not going to write that's an idea for a stretch goal. Anyway,
that sounds like your problem, not mine. But
anyway, so Steve, unfortunately, no points there. Yes. But I think you are the winner this week because you have 1,000 points to Peter's 7.
Picked at the post.
Very generous to your guest.
Congratulations. Well, not always.
Not always.
Congratulations. You are the winner of this week's Our Favourite Game in All the World. You get to take home a trophy, a metaphorical sense of self-satisfaction.
Smug self-satisfaction.
Smug self-satisfaction.
Yes.
Even better.
Absolutely. Well done.
Thank you.
Greetings, Sir Armourer. I am here to buy a new suit of armour.
Well, here at Smith and Spiff, we have the best weaponsmiths and armourers in all the land, my lord. What can I get for you?
Well, I've recently been honoured by the Queen with the noble rank of Knight 4th Class. I need to upgrade my current apparel accordingly.
Of course, sir. You can't be seen slaying dragons in that old thing.
It has seen better days, so tell me, Smith?
No, I'm Smith, sir. Smith does the accounting.
Right you are, Smith. So what do you have for me?
Oh, you came in at just the right time, my lord. We've recently taken possession of the finest suit of armour I've ever had the pleasure to lay my eyes upon.
My, yes, it is very shiny. And those ornate runes.
Oh, yes, indeed, sir. It is highly enchanted by no less than the Eldritch War Council of the Fourth Age.
The Fourth Age? Why, this is an antique. It must have a wonderful lineage.
Oh, yes, sir. It was first worn by Sir Borcus the Bedevilled, sir, in the Battle of Three Purses.
Ah, yes, a noble hero with a gruesome fate. He deserved better. Huh. Ironic, really. The finest suit of armour in the land didn't help him much, did it?
No, sadly not, sir. It then passed to Lady Strongarm the Charmless, who adventured in this very suit of armour while hunting the blood kobolds of Fangtooth Peak.
I read about her as a young lad, peppered by kobold arrows. A sad fate.
Oh, very sad, sir. So unfortunate.
Well, who else wore this fine suit, Smith?
Smith, sir.
Sorry, Smith.
No matter, sir. Well, the next heroic soul to don this magnificent ensemble was Captain Bollingwood of the Always Winter City Guard.
And what happened to him?
Stabbed in an alley by a ferocious raccoon, sir.
An unfortunate history, this armour. Still, who else was there?
Well, there's Jarkle the Bold.
Lost his first duel.
Lord Garrick of the Silvered Garricks.
Accidentally skewered by his own squire.
The mighty Herculum, a breaker of the Iron Gates.
Defeated in battle by a mere goblin.
Lady Sybil Redlington of Milton Keynes.
Run over by a speeding carriage.
The 16th Emperor of the Grey Race.
Assassinated.
The great gladiator Artemis.
Eaten.
Cobalt the Barbarian.
Speared.
Commander Brightcloak of the Queen's Watch.
Accidentally fell on his own sword. Look, is there anybody who actually wore this armour and survived?
My lord, I assure you this is the finest armour in all the land.
It's certainly very shiny, I give you that, but its efficacy seems to be in doubt. Tell me, Smith.
Smith, sir.
Tell me, Smith, what armour class does this lovely suit provide?
Oh, see how shiny and well inlaid with the finest jewels it is, sir.
That wasn't my question, Smith.
Smith, sir.
Never mind that. What is its armour class?
Oh, look at this gold threading, sir. Weaved by the finest goldsmiths ever to walk this here world.
Armour class.
And the pockets. So many pockets. One thing I do know, sir, is that you can never have too many pockets.
Smith, I'm going to ask you this one last time. What is the armour class of this suit of armour?
10, sir.
10?
Yes, sir.
But my underwear has an AC of 10, 12 with my dexterity bonus.
Well, yes, technically you wouldn't get your dexterity bonus with this armour, sir.
What? So I'm literally better off not wearing it?
Well, technically.
Technically? You're telling me that in the heat of battle, my most effective tactic would be to strip off my armour and fight in my underoos?
It is the finest suit of armour in all the land, sir.
Finest? My grandmother's nightshirt makes for a better suit of armour. No wonder everybody who wore it came to a grisly end.
Oh, but it is very reasonably priced, sir.
I dread to ask. Okay, fine. Tell me, how much is it?
A mere snip at 1 million gold coins, sir.
1 million? For an armour class of 10?
This is an antique, sir. Have you seen the silk underlay?
Silk has nothing to do with it. This here armour fails to perform the single most fundamental task for which it was created.
But the pockets.
Pockets don't do me any good when I'm skewered on the claws of a bog troll, do they?
Many would give their left arm for such a fine suit of armour, sir.
And several did. Look here, Smith.
Smith, sir.
Look here, Smith. This is the worst armour shop I've ever been unfortunate enough to visit. Your wares are useless, and you fail to grasp the most basic principles of combat protection. You wouldn't know a fine suit of armour if it hit you in the face.
Oh, I say, sir, that's a little strong.
And furthermore, the sheer gall you have to charge 1 million gold coins for such a pointless, ineffective pile of junk. You, Sir Smith, are the worst armoursmith I have ever encountered. You are a disgrace to the profession. You should be ashamed. What do you have to say for yourself?
How about I've thrown this lovely set of pyjamas, sir.
Oh, I'll take it.
This podcast malarkey is quite good fun.
True. We do get to talk to interesting people.
They are very interesting, and we've had all sorts.
Big names, old and new.
But how do we know who to talk to?
Well, sometimes our patrons give us suggestions.
What? So we try and get the people they want us to talk to on?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's a pretty sweet deal.
Yeah, and obviously they get the fullest version of the podcast.
The fullest? They do?
Yeah, all the funny stories and random jokes and digressions.
Really? People are missing out on those?
Well, they're not news, are they?
Oh, come on, but they're some of my favourite bits. How can you avoid missing out?
Well, that's easy. So just become a perfectly proper podcast patron.
Perfectly proper podcast patron? What? How?
Well, you head along to patreon.com/Morrus and subscribe there.
Oh, well, how much does that cost? $50 a month?
You'd think. I mean, it's certainly worth $50 a month, but no, just $1.
Is it? Mate, that's like 25 cents an episode.
Yeah, it's good, isn't it?
Patreon.com.Morrus. M-O-R-R-U-S?
M-O-R-R-U-S.
Cheers, I'll check that out.
Let's talk about DriveThruRPG, shall we?
Yes,
Sure.
let's.
So, I'm old enough, Steve, to remember when DriveThruRPG came about.
Yes.
Which is, 2004-ish?
You're coming up on the century curse, then, is what you're saying.
So, because at the time, there was RPG Now was around, if I recall correctly.
James Matthey had started RPG Now.
Yeah, and this is pre the Paizo store. That didn't exist.
No,
at the time, and the other smaller ones that have popped up since then. So basically, it was RPG Now, and then you guys came along,
and then we came along next.
A couple of years later.
Exactly.
Yeah. So when you did that, was it kind of a case of you saw RPG Now and you thought, okay, we can do that too? We could.
Right. Well, at the time, I was with White Wolf Publishing.
Yeah.
Which was my former life, and we had just put out the new edition of Vampire Requiem. And, as a larger publisher, you put in a considerable amount of coin, which in those days there was no Kickstarter, so you aren't pre-selling it. It's quite an investment to produce the game. And then within a few days of releasing it, someone scanned it in and made a PDF and are sharing it on the BitTorrents and everything else. So at the time, we were kind of like, can't beat them, join them. If people really want the digital, then shouldn't we be offering this in some sort of...
Then why not sell it to them rather than...
Yes. And, there are a lot of people who wanted that option, who were willing to help, pay, just like, Patreon, Kickstarter, everything else. There's a lot of honest gamers out there who are willing to support their hobby. So we did, and we said, well, this doesn't really make sense if we just do it ourselves. This makes more sense if it's a separate business that invites all the other publishers to join in and do it as well, because this is happening to their titles as well. And then the fact that RPG Now already existed certainly helped and showed that there was a model out there that seemed interesting and might be working or not.
Yeah.
And we just wanted to do it with a lot more content from a lot more publishers.
So I assume at the time you probably did a whole bunch of, you looked at the market, you looked at the landscape. What was like the landscape look like before you and RPG Now came along and started making it into a proper sort of storefront? Because presumably people did sell PDFs occasionally, but it wasn't anything like the sort of entire industry it is now. So what was the landscape sort of like when you came onto it?
Yeah, quite fragmented, really. And also technology at the time. I mean, you're still talking in days before broadband was broadly accessible. And so there was a lot of CD-ROM stuff. I mean, you get into mid-90s and on, and there's publishers selling content on CD-ROM.
Yeah, I remember that, yeah.
We're talking back in the days when opening up a cafe and saying, you can come and play multiplayer games using our broadband was a feasible business model.
That's right.
Yeah.
Interesting
times.
And then there were some folks offering, electronic or PDF sort of things, but often it was still like, we'll send it to you on disc, or there's lots of interesting, sort of like how Netflix, in a way, changed from, mailing you DVDs to,
Yeah. Well, I still remember getting my first Netflix CD DVD pack through the mail.
Yeah. But it really took a website and downloads and things for that model to really make sense, I think. And James Matthew with RPG Now was the first to do it in a serious way. And then to the extent that we were a copycat of what James did, I came along and just tried to, and I was, having already been in the industry for 15 years or more at that point, I knew most of the other top RPG publishers and so it was still a lot of work, but we could pull them together and they could say, okay, well, White Wolf's doing this and Monty Cook's doing this and others, so maybe I need to do it as well or should do it. Yeah.
So at the time you came on, I mean, how long were you and RPG Now in competition for? Was it like a couple of years, was it, before you decided to merge?
We merged in 2006, forming our current company called OneBookShelf.
Yeah.
So it was about 4 or 5 years that we competed. They'd release some feature on their website, and we'd be like, "Oh, that looks like a good idea. Maybe we should do that too," and vice versa. But and that's really a lot of what spurred us to say maybe we should combine forces, because we were basically both sitting there in different silos doing the same kind of web development, and it's like, well, why don't we just team up and do twice the web development rather than just replicate each other's work.
So did that come from your end then, or did James approach you? Or
it did. I met James at Gamma, as a game trade show that happens in Las Vegas when there's not a pandemic going on, and we met there for the first time to talk about this, and I just floated the idea past him, and then it came together over 6 months or something. It happened to be the same year that White Wolf was being sold to CCP, merging with CCP, the Icelandic EVE Online company. And so for me, it was 2 mergers in 1 year. It was a very busy year, 2006. And but when White Wolf sold to CCP, then I actually went full-time working with OneBookShelf and chose to do that. So.
And then you never went back.
And then I never went back.
Since. Yeah. So, it's kind of fair to say, I think, probably DriveThru is the lion's share, like by an order of magnitude, I'd say the main PDF seller for tabletop RPG content in the world, isn't it?
I imagine so. I don't like to say that myself. But if you want to say it, Russ, then
well, I've sold at various outlets myself.
Yes.
And definitely DriveThru is the one where, like, historically, the majority of my sales would have come from compared to others.
Sure.
I mean, there's some that have come and gone, and there's some that, but DriveThru.
Like,
well, I have a few interesting numbers.
Is pretty big. Yeah.
Sorry, Peter, what?
Itch.io is there as well, and they're doing a lot of stuff for the indie scene.
Yep.
Because they're definitely enjoying a lot of support from the people there.
Yep.
Yeah. So I would argue though that your biggest competition probably isn't other PDF sellers; it's other business models entirely, like Kickstarter, Patreon, maybe sort of like the Roll20s and virtual tabletop marketplaces and things like that. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that in a way there's all of these sort of, Venn diagrams of circles that overlap a bit.
Yeah.
And if you take any one of those, there's ways that we sort of cooperate and synergize with them, and other ways that we compete with them.
Yeah.
So certainly like Kickstarter as an example, when Kickstarter started...
Well, Kickstarter's the one that sprang to mind because I fulfill pretty much, I'd say, a good half of my... Kickstarters through DriveThruRPG, the ones that I don't do offset print runs for.
Yeah.
So if I'm going to do a print on demand fulfillment, which I do frequently because it's so convenient, so easy to do.
Yep.
You finish a Kickstarter and you fulfilled it like a couple of weeks later and you're done. It's so easy.
Yes.
So that's basically how you cooperate with Kickstarter, is that most people will generate
and also,
the product.
To an extent, Kickstarter has helped all creators monetize, which creates more content, which is content that normally we end up seeing. So, when Kickstarter was first exploding on the scene, we were like, is this a competitive threat for us? Is this something we need to worry about? Yeah. But over time, it has just shown itself to be something else that's additive to the hobby.
So it's benefited you rather than...
Yeah, and a lot of our focus is actually, we measure ourselves on how much money we send every year to creators.
Yeah.
Ooh.
And so we look at something like Kickstarter, and it's like, well, that's sending more money to creators too, and it's not, directly competitive to what we're trying to offer. Mm-hmm. We're where people can go to say, I want something right now, and I don't want to wait some nebulous time frame and pay now and whatever. They just they need something now, and they also want to search a big selection for a particular type of thing, and so it's just it's a very different model, and we found it more synergistic surprisingly than not. Yeah,
because I think you also host the DM's Guild silo as well.
That's right. Yeah. So OneBookShelf, we host several sites, and the two most people would know would be DriveThruRPG and DM's Guild, which has been very exciting for us to have that happen, and through that we've offered more community content programs, so that I go back to the root of the business, like we were talking a moment ago. I think there's a couple of things that happened in the market, and one of them was the open game license that came along with 3rd edition D&D, and the other was RPG Now and DriveThruRPG starting up, letting people sell PDFs. Yeah. And suddenly the whole business changed from you needing thousands and thousands of dollars to create your first role-playing game to needing almost nothing. Yeah. Because you can lock into the most popular game system, and you can sell it as a PDF without investing in some big offset print run, because POD wasn't really there yet. No. And so it just opened the doors for a lot of people to create.
Yeah. I think the barriers to entry into the industry have been steadily coming down. So I think the first one, I can't remember who it was that said this, and I've mentioned this before on the podcast, but is it Ryan Downsey or Mike Mills or someone like that, went through a list of, I think it was 4 different things. So the first one was desktop publishing. Yep. When that happened, that was transformative.
Yes.
The second one probably was PDF publishing, I think, is what you mentioned. So things like DriveThruRPG and RPG Now and platforms really reduced the barriers massively.
Right.
Kickstarter was the next one in that it made it possible for you to get the funding for your, so that.
Yes, in advance, basically.
Yeah. And it's going to be interesting to see what comes next, that kind of thing. I mean,
right.
I imagine you think about that constantly. You've got to. I mean, that's basically your business. I mean, I mean, do you think the model as it is with DriveThru is something that can go on indefinitely, or do you think there's, ways in which maybe you're going to have to evolve or adapt or things will change?
Well, a lot of our focus is on finding ways to make it easier for people to create content and create good content. And so things like DM's Guild, where now anyone can produce their own D&D supplement and upload it and start selling it. And now we have those programs, as you know, for many other game systems, Call of Cthulhu and World of Darkness and different things. And so...
Well, D&D supplement using D&D's intellectual property, I think.
Exactly. All of the intellectual property.
And you can only sell it on that DM's Guild place. Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah.
Yep.
But you get to use Forgotten Realms, and you get to, use elements.
You can have Drizzt in your...
You can have Drizzt if you really... If you want a Drizzt, you can have a Drizzt.
Yes, exactly.
You can have a Beholder rather than an eye-beast or something.
Yeah.
And you've got a big community coming and looking every day at for something coming out there and looking for something to add to their D&D game. So it's been wonderful. And so that's an example where we feel like that's broken down some more barriers. So if somebody wants to create something, but they want to create it for one of their favorite games, well, now they have a greater avenue to do that.
Yeah.
And so it just spurs more creation. And
so DM's Guild's a really good example, because I think for a good few years before DM's Guild came about, people were saying Wizards of the Coast is going to do an Apple App Store at some point. And DM's Guild turns out to be kind of the implementation of that. Sort of. So, I mean, but did they come to you with that? Did you go to them? How did that come about?
Right. Well, we were talking to them about a whole range of business things, and then in a meeting, Chris Lindsay comes in and says, "Hey, how about this?" And we're like, that sounds awesome. Let's do that. Right. So really, if there's anyone, it's Chris Lindsay who had the original idea for it. And then we rolled with it from there. And it was a few short months and we had it live.
Really? That quick?
It was an exciting few months, but it was,
Because I assume at the time you probably were maybe talking to them about selling D&D PDFs generally, because there was a period when you couldn't get D&D PDFs at all, wasn't there?
That's right.
For a while.
Yes.
I can't remember the time periods involved, but for a while
there was a bit of a roller coaster to our relationship over the years there with D&D content. And it's still, I mean, if I have one frustration in the business, it's that we are able to sell we sell almost all RPG content, except the two largest games.
Right.
We don't really get to sell Paizo official titles, and we don't really get to sell D&D 5th edition official titles. So that's a little troublesome. But
it is pretty interesting because you can find yourself potentially having to buy the same product up to 4 times. Like you might buy it from DriveThruRPG, you might buy it on Roll20, you might buy it on D&D Beyond. And you might buy a physical copy.
Right. Yeah.
Like, so you bought the same thing 4 times. And whilst obviously this is potentially good for creators in that you could get paid 4 times the same work, on the other hand, you're probably not going to get someone buy the same thing 4 times. Do you know what I mean? So,
and I think that's, I mean, you can go to DriveThruRPG, and if a publisher has a title available for download and print, you can get usually some sort of combination deal where, you pay nothing for the PDF or something small for the PDF to add on.
Yeah, I know in the UK you've got the bricks and mortar scheme, which is where RPG shops with like proof of purchase will give you a code so you can get the PDF free, which is really useful because they've all got
some publishers are printing unique codes in their books as well. Like Goodman Games will print unique codes in the book, and you can redeem the PDF at DriveThru.
Getting a PDF copy when you buy a physical copy has become so standard now that I notice it when it's not there.
Yeah.
I mean, I do it myself. You buy a physical book from me, you will always get the PDF for free. And if you bought it somewhere else, just email me and I'll make sure you get set up. So I think that's...
And I think where it makes sense to ask the customer, the fan to buy both or to pay something for more than one format is when that format does require extra work for the publisher to put together where it has cost. So obviously a printed book, well, there's cost involved with producing that book, and that's got to be covered. But also, if a publisher does a proper job of creating their PDF, that can be quite a lot of extra formatting work at times. If they really want to do it right.
PDFs and there's PDFs, absolutely.
Especially if you add functionality into them,
Yes.
Oh, yeah. But I mean, PDFs without functionality just feel lazy, I've got to say. Like, I know it's a very harsh thing to say, but it just feels that way. It's like, I want it to be properly hyperlinked. It's there to be convenient.
Right.
If I'm running it on a thing, I need to be able to find what I want quickly.
But sometimes it's even more in that, like, we're trying to promote that publishers consider doing what we call a phone PDF. I mean, historically, people have done publishers and creators have done PDFs by taking the layout of their printed book, which is, A4, 8.5 by 11, and basically converting it. And that's fine if you're reading on an iPad. It's okay on a desktop, but a desktop 16 by 9 kind of format. So maybe it's a 2-page spread.
But on a phone,
but on a phone, it just doesn't work. You're like pinching and zooming. And so the phone PDF would ask a publisher to relay out your book to a page size that fits a phone. And also, when you're reading on a phone, you want to have a lot of navigation just so that you can navigate it purely by touch. You don't really want a page. And so there's a lot of extra navigation added. And we have examples on DriveThruRPG, some of which are free. So I'd encourage folks to try it out.
I remember when you announced it was probably a year ago or something, a few years, something like that.
A year ago.
Have you got any sort of figures on that? How was it doing? People embraced
slow.
it?
It's slow because for publishers it's a lot of extra work. And it's something new, and any publisher or creators got a lot of possible things to spend their time on. So this one has to prove itself out to be commercially important.
Because you're basically having to pay for layout twice, really, aren't you?
Yeah.
You really are. But we're going to push the format again this year with some new titles that will be in that format, and also, of course, we're developing our app, which helps people sync their whole library to their tablet, and we'll have a phone version of that app coming out. And but it makes sense for people to be able to consume their games on their phone as easily as they do their other devices, and so I think we have to get there.
I think about 8-10 years ago, I had all these PDFs that I had acquired from various Kickstarters. I was like, it would be amazing to have access to this. This, like I said, it was a while back. I'm like, okay, so what I'll do is I'll get a tablet and I will use the tablet to go through the PDFs. And it was a strong idea, but you know what? It just did not work at all for me. It was not good. Couldn't find anything, couldn't flip between pages. It didn't have that sort of ease of use and interface.
Yep.
But I think we're all familiar with like the Pathfinder GM's complaint of, well, here's me, here's my rucksack.
Yes, exactly. Let me bring my donkey cart of
Well, I suppose nowadays you've got your like little mini low loader to pull along.
We have customers with thousands and thousands of titles in their library.
Yeah, I mean, I've got quite a few. Can we just go back quickly to that sort of Paizo and Wizards thing, though? Because, I mean, obviously I can see why Paizo isn't going to sell official Paizo PDFs on your store because they have their own competing store.
Well,
sort of.
Yes, they do. Paizo was obviously a publisher first and foremost, and a store secondarily, and I would say that
it's not their primary business, but they do sell third-party PDFs there.
Yep.
And one of the things I know they do is they also give you discounts. Like it's as you were saying, Steve. Like there is added value. But they give you a discount on buying the same product from Roll20, which it's like I'm a bit of a nerd, but then I am getting a lot of stuff for what I'm getting extra work, extra value has been added to the product. So that is pretty interesting.
But anyway, sort of going back to that. So, but from Wizards' point of view, Wizards doesn't have the same situation. I was just wondering if you had any, I mean, obviously you can't speak for Wizards and I wouldn't ask you to, but have you got any insight into why you can't buy like official D&D 5th edition books on RPG, on DriveThru?
Well, it hasn't been for lack of us asking.
I know they were citing piracy at one point, but that can't really be the reason because that's...
Well, I mean, you can go out and in 2 seconds find anything online if you want to. It's when iTunes launched and people were already used to stealing music on Napster. People asked Steve Jobs, "Well, how are you going to sell music for $1?" I know exactly. How are you going to sell music for $1 a song or whatever? And he's like, well, some people, want to do the right thing. And also they just want the convenience of...
Well, that's another thing, though. It's so much easier to buy it from... You don't want messing around with stealing stuff from torrents and... it's...
People want to pay creators. Ultimately,
it's the hobby's not going to exist if people don't make the right choice.
Exactly.
Yeah. So piracy is out there, and but they've chosen D&D Beyond as a digital partner. And they've got
Roll20, and they've got Fantasy Grounds sell versions of their books as well.
And so their current outlook seems to be that they aren't interested in adding more digital partners.
It's a shame. I would definitely pay for that. Yeah. Without a doubt. I mean, it's not many companies that I would buy them in both formats and pay separately for them, but probably D&D I would, I think.
Yes.
Well, I mean, DM's Guild's a big thing on its own, isn't it? I mean, I think you've said before the DM's Guild now is bigger than the main DriveThruRPG site.
No, sorry, no, it's not.
True? Oh, that's what
no, definitely not. It's big, don't get me wrong, but it's definitely secondary. If you want, we'll play a little game.
All right.
I have a few data points for you.
Why not? That'll be fun.
Okay.
All the
wrong.
As OneBookShelf, we operate several marketplaces, right? But if you have a customer account, it works. So if you have a customer account in DM's Guild, it works on DriveThru and all of that. We also have Wargame Vault for war games and other sites. But But by far, DriveThruRPG and the RPG hobbies are cornerstone. So how many total products do we have in our marketplace?
Across all sites, including DM's Guild?
DM's, yes.
Hundreds of thousands.
I'm going to say about 10 million.
200,000. We just passed 200,000. Russ was right on the money.
Yes.
Do you know how I know that? I counted them. One at a time.
Yeah.
Right before the podcast. Just so you can answer that question.
Well, Russ doesn't have a lot of hobbies, so he's got to find something to do as a hermit. So.
Yeah, 200,000. Wow, that's a lot of content.
We get about 600 new titles a week.
Nice.
And we have 11,000 titles in print. So by far it is way more titles offered digitally than in print.
How big is the print on demand part of it for you as opposed to the digital?
Probably about 20% of the business or something like that. Yeah,
because it's definitely my favorite part of the business.
Yes, and to use it for Kickstarter fulfillment and various other things. Yeah. And
I do really like the quality, by the way, of the print on demand stuff that Kickstarter produces.
Wonderful.
Do you know what I was kind of thinking the other day? Is that BackerKit, a lot of the functionality that BackerKit offers, I think that DriveThruRPG would be in a position to offer that better, because a lot of it is that you've got the pledge manager, and then you've got a whole bunch of stuff that you can add on to your pledge. But DriveThruRPG already has that stock. It already exists in your database and on your servers, and the publishers already have an account there. So if there was some way to link up Kickstarter, some kind of API with DriveThruRPG, and you did pledge fulfillment, including print on demand, automatically tied in like that, I think that would be amazing.
Yes. I mean, I'm always getting things from BackerKit complaining, "Oh, you haven't filled in a survey." Even when I have, so just saying,
there's areas of improvement.
But is that a thing you thought about, Steve, or is that a thing that
it a little bit? And we've been trying to creep into that area a little bit, but mostly just by putting together tools that make it easier and easier for publishers to do their fulfillment. And so you just upload your data file of backers and addresses and ship out.
I think you were talking about a shipping cost calculator a few weeks ago, actually.
Yes, at least an initial version of it.
Yeah, because I think it was me that mentioned it. It was
yes, it was. That was your
so
gem.
Basically, if you got sort of like 10 different pledge tiers and 10 different add-ons, and you need to ship those to 30 different countries in a number of different combinations, you are working out the shipping costs for dozens and dozens and dozens, manually, one at a time, painstakingly, one at a time, dozens and dozens of different shipping combinations of different countries. So this pledge tier to France cost this pledge tier to Norway cost this pledge tier to Australia cost this. All right, next pledge tier, and then that's why I only offer to sort of like half a dozen countries, because I'm not going to work that out for 200 countries. It's just not happening.
No.
Oh wow, that's just that feels like there's money being left on the table, because I presume, and I don't know, that the postal charges for various countries would be publicly available information.
Well, they vary constantly anyway. But the added thing is, with add-ons, it means that any given order could be one of a number of different combinations. So even if you've only got 6 pledge tiers, it's not just 6 shipping prices you need, because...
No. But, and this is the thing, it's like, if you know what the shipping prices are for a size of a package, what you'd then be asked as the person producing it is, how much will this weigh? Or what size package will it fit in?
Well, I mean, that's going on to what...
which hopefully you will know.
Yeah, well, that's what we're just going on to what we were just talking about, because Steve came up with the idea of a page which you select a given combination of books and stuff.
Yeah,
and then it just spits out the shipping costs for a whole range of different countries. Which I don't know. Is that coming ahead, Steve? Is that a thing that's happening?
Yeah, it's the initial implementation of it's done.
Oh wow, cool.
It's a bit of a it was a little bit of a hack, honestly, how we did it. But it's absolutely functional. And then later down the line, we'll do a proper version of the tool.
It's going to save me hours of time, honestly. Yes. That is such a good idea.
I'll make sure you get the info on how to do it right now.
I'll be using that straight away without a doubt.
Perfect. But as with any sort of web business service, we're always trying to listen to the customers and the publishers and find out what the pain points are, and so we're not really out to compete with, say, a backer kit per se, but if there are certain things that our publishers would make their lives easier, then we'll go look to do those things. And try to make life easy.
So
easy life is better.
I suppose you probably always got things in development which you maybe don't want to talk about, but is there anything, is there stuff on the horizon? Is there...
Yeah, so we've got a couple of things. One, we're always improving the app that we have so people can more easily sync their whole library to their desktop or their tablet or whatever. So we're coming out with a new version of that, yet another version of that in another month or two it'll release. And we are working on basically a whole new website.
Yeah, I've seen previews of that actually. Yeah, shiny website. Because you've had the same design for 15 years, haven't you? It's been...
Well, yeah, I mean, you can do the Wayback Machine, and there were, like, when we first launched DriveThruRPG, it was actually like a drive-through menu that was on the home page, and it had a little speaker, and if you clicked the speaker, there were random pre-recorded messages that would play for you. And, like, what, you want Traveler? Is that Mega Traveler? Traveler 2000? It's all this sort of
and do you want fries for that?
Yeah, exactly. So the website has changed quite a bit. We basically, over operating it for this many years, have sort of accumulated a lot of technical debt and makes it harder to move forward with new features. So we're starting all over and going with a sort of a new architecture and having to basically recode the site from the ground up. And we've been working on it for a couple of years, but no one would notice because it's a lot of back-end work first. And now as the front end starts to develop, we'll be able to show more of those results.
So is that focused more around customers, or have you got some back-end tools in
Well, initially we want the customers to be happy because that's what pays all the real bills.
No. What sort of business plan is this?
But there's a lot we want to do with publisher tools. Actually, the instigation of doing a new site and recoding our whole site came because we wanted to go through and just do a whole new pass on the user experience for our publisher tools. Like right now, the process, so many things have grown organically. Like, let's graft this new function onto this page and over time, and it just, after 15 years or more, it becomes a bit of a mess.
Yeah, it's a bit piecemeal, isn't it?
Yeah. So it's like, we'd like you to just be able to upload your PDF file, and we'll grab the cover for you. We'll grab the page count for you. There's a lot of things about the whole flow that a publisher uses that we could easily be optimized once we're. But to do that, we decided better to actually change our framework out first, and so we're redoing the site. And there's a preview, so if you go to DriveThruRPG, you can click on the little header link and see the preview of the new site there. I know a new e-commerce site design isn't maybe the most thrilling thing to look at, but for us,
it is when you sell morning. It is.
Yes, exactly. And there's nice things like the cover sizes will be larger now, and and be a little bit. The product pages are a lot more attractive, and easier previews and more images to see what you're getting, and a lot of things to help the customer.
Are you keeping things like the front page, because that, I believe, I could be wrong, and you know better, that has quite a significant boost in sales if you make the front page.
Absolutely, it does, yeah. So the top, I mean, as with most sites, you can do some analysis, and it's like anything that shows on your first screen break for customers, like only 10% of customers ever scroll beyond that first screen break. So if you're on the top, then it has a big impact on sales.
So it's like with the whole 10% rule, isn't it? Every click drops you down to 10% of the previous click. So you want to put as few steps and as few barriers in place as possible.
Right.
Yeah.
So a lot of our focus, as always, is on making sure discovery is there with 200,000 products.
That could be a challenge.
How do we help people find the product they want? We have interesting discussions about how do you categorize role-playing game titles? Like, do we break them into game master books and player books?
Yeah.
Well, what about GM-less games then? And you know, these are the kind of conversations we get to have about these sorts of things.
I suppose on the other side is you've got to watch out because some publishers will just categorize things by clicking as many boxes as they can to make it their thing appear as often as they can, which must be a challenge from your end as well.
Absolutely. It's one of our biggest challenges, actually, is because, I mean, we try to put a lot of power into publishers' hands. It's a high trust relationship where it's like the publisher, when they load up their title, they self-select. I think this title belongs in these categories of, you know, high fantasy genre and this, and the other. And there are publishers who will just spam categories because they feel like it'll get their product more views. So we're policing that constantly, punishing some bad offenders. I hate to use the word punishment, but that's essentially what it boils down to. You know, there's a few things we audit the site for, like publishers reviewing their own titles, and publishers spamming categories and things like that, which just degrade the experience then for everybody.
I mean, I got a bit from my point of view because I'm fairly diligent about that sort of stuff. But when other people are doing it, it affects me as well.
Like, well, if everybody's cheating on their tax return, then why am I the... exactly. You get into that sort of... But, and then we're also considering ways to maybe crowdsource that.
That's an interesting idea,
where we ask the actual customers, you know, does this product really belong in high fantasy?
But then, of course, you get people crowd bombing it, and
that's right.
That's the trouble that Rotten Tomatoes and places like that have run into recently.
That's review bombing.
Review bombing. That's right. Review bombing.
Yes.
I mean, do you get any of that at all in the because you've got reviews in?
We do.
You do get that.
So we have had customers before, like you've got a page on site under your account page where you can go and see every product you've ordered that you have not yet reviewed, and you can just kind of go through and leave reviews or ratings. So people can just leave a 1 to 5 star rating, or they can also write a text review. And we try to encourage the full text reviews in many different ways, but a lot of people just want to rate it quickly. So we've had people go in and just like 1, right down the line. And so then, you know, we respond by coding something around that. Oh, you've left this many 1-star reviews today. How about you wait and do more tomorrow if this is really what you want to do?
Maybe you just don't like PDFs. Maybe RPGs aren't for you.
You've ordered every one of this publisher's free PDFs and given them all 1-star ratings. Let me think about what you're trying to accomplish here. You know,
but that sort of stuff's got to be hard to police as well, because on the one side, sometimes statistically you'll get people doing something like that, and the likelihood of that being their honest opinion on those products is low. But it's not impossible. So I suppose this is on top of my mind, because one of the things we do is we review feedback we get from customers. And one of the customers wrote in complaining that we were throttling the number of 1-star reviews they could leave in a day. And it's like, this, you're subverting your whole review and system. You're, you know, whatever. And I'm like, well, all right. Okay. Well, how many 1-star reviews can I leave in a day? Just out of interest. I just gotta organize my schedule.
Put it on a recurring reminder.
But whilst we're talking about 1-star reviews, I mean, I think there have been some times when you've had to make some, like, from a commercial point of view, extremely difficult decisions. Like, say, I won't name any names here, say there is a game that's associated with someone who's become well known for being controversial. And you have to decide what you're going to do. I mean, like, the easy choice is to do nothing.
No, exactly. Well, there is no easy choice, I think, Peter, but there really isn't. And that's been some of our biggest... It's the part of the business that I actually dislike the most. When my brother and I started White Wolf, and we lived in the Bible Belt of the U.S. at the time, and we took an early issue of our magazine, which had a Medusa face on the cover, to a local printer to be printed. We came back 2 weeks later to pick up our copies, and he's like, I'm a Christian. I don't print this sort of, witchcraft, whatever. And we're like, okay, fine, whatever. It's actually Greek mythology, but okay, well, and then all through White Wolf, I mean, White Wolf pushed some boundaries for a lot of people in the traditional. I mean, these days you'd be like, well, we put out a clan book that had the word fuck in it, and it's like, well, these days in RPGs, like, whatever, right?
Right.
In that
at
day,
the time, that's
at the time,
really
it was quite something, and then we kept pushing the boundary. But anyway,
it's the nature of artists to be controversial.
Well, of course, and also just like not everybody at the time D&D was going very, no more devils and demons, and second edition phase was in full gear of sort of, I don't know, just whitewashing or toning down the thing. And we were going sort of the other direction and saying, well, adults play role-playing games too, so how about, content that adults don't mind interacting with? But now I'm in a position with DriveThru, and we're in the business of trying to host anybody's role-playing game. And where do you draw the line for what content and what kind of is acceptable or not? And then there's always the question of, well, who do you want to work with?
Well, from my point of view, it's who do you want to do business with? If I don't want to do business with someone, But that runs into a minefield, I guess. But
it can.
On one side, well, people on both sides of the equation are gonna have problems with you, whatever you decide, aren't they?
That's right. And you'll never please everybody, that's for sure. And you won't please almost anyone on Twitter. And
I don't think it's possible to please anyone on Twitter. I've looked into it, and it's, there's a lot of people who get very angry about some very strange things.
Yes. You just try. We've just tried to find the right path for allowing the most kinds of content.
It's happened pretty rarely, though, I think, isn't it? It's only like a couple of times, isn't it?
It's only really come up a couple of times, which is a credit. I mean, if we have 200,000 products and it's only come up a couple of times, it's really a credit to the gaming community, I think, that it's not an issue more frequently. And a lot of times when it is an issue, it's an issue that people, honestly, more outside the hobby are making into an issue than inside the hobby, it seems to me.
Especially when these things come up and these things do happen, however infrequently, I guess. I mean, are these sort of things that tend to sort of end up on your doorstep personally? Do you make that sort of final call? Or?
Well, we discuss it heavily as a team. I mean, we get lots of different perspectives on it. And we've got a team internally that is sometimes quite divided on it.
Right.
And we don't always see eye to eye, but we discuss it and try to get all the viewpoints on the table, and then if we can come to a consensus, great. More often than not, I've been wrong on issues, so I try not to just impose my view. But if I have to, then I would. So at some point, I probably err a bit more towards allowing content on site and allowing things than not. Certainly, one of the things that bothers me the most when these issues pop up are the people that are protesting a piece of content and have never even read it. And that strikes me as quite problematic. But
you'd like people to speak from a place of informed.
On the other hand, it's hard to expect someone to support a title that on the surface looks problematic to them. So why would I want to pay $1 or $5 to support this creator, to buy it, to read it, to more accurately judge it? I get that it's a bit of a conundrum as well.
And again, there are things like guidelines, like what gets judged as being okay in terms of sex and sexuality, like what can you have as cover art? Like some things might be very male-gazy, and things which are less traditionally male-gazy, but which appeal to other audiences, like a lot of new writers and creators are queer, for want of a better word, just to, like, it has a sort of umbrella term, like part of that LGBTQ plus community. It's like some of them have felt that their products have been, like, then they've not been okay when they can see other people have done stuff. I know DriveThruRPG has changed its guidelines and that sort of thing over the past couple of years. So, it's pretty interesting, but it does seem like there's some very tough decisions that you've got to make.
Yeah, I think so. For example, we don't allow any photographic art of nudity in general. And that's because we've run into problems with... We had a publisher provide a title to the site, and we had some issues with it, and the creator was like, well, its age of consent in Japan is this versus... And we're like, well, we sell worldwide, so we can't be doing this. And so there's all kinds of issues. But I think that we try to... I at least would like to err towards being inclusive of all kinds of content.
Yes.
And sometimes the problematic end for us is also when a publisher or creator feels that they will get more notice to their title if they create controversy around it.
Well, sadly, that's usually true. So.
Unfortunately, it is usually true. Anytime there's a controversy, sales of that title spike because everybody's talking about it. And it's not always a title that you'd like to see sales spiking on.
Right.
I made the mistake once, though, of suggesting publicly maybe you don't want to, have, because you're really just helping this thing. And then I was like, that wasn't taken the right way, or the way I intended it. So it's, but we get people who are sort of repeat offenders who feel like if they put out something they can create some controversy around, then they'll get more notice to their title. But that's just not, it's not a great way to conduct business.
Go back in time. I'm trying to remember when I first signed up as a publisher to the site. And obviously this is so long ago, I just literally can't remember what the process was or what the onboarding process was. I mean, Is there a vetting process at the first stage? I assume there was at the time. I just don't remember it. But was there
So we get about 50 new publisher accounts to the site each week. We have 17,000 publishers with an active title.
That's a lot. 17,000 publishers.
And then on top of that,
you told me that the market for buying PDFs online with 17,000 customers, I'd have been amazed. You got 17,000 publishers.
And on top of that, now there's over 9,000 people who have created something for a community content program like
that's not even counting them, right?
Others.
So we're talking like nearly 30,000, right? Okay.
We're approaching.
I imagine there's probably a bit of overlap, but maybe not as much.
Yes, there is some overlap. That's true, Peter. So some of those count twice then, but. There's a lot of people, and over time we've adjusted and modified how they on-ramp, so to speak. How they. So if you're a new publisher on DriveThruRPG, you go through a verification process. So you join and you submit your first title, and then an actual live human being looks at your first title listing before it goes onto the market. Oddly, on DM's Guild, that's not the case. You can come as a creator, upload a title, and it'll go live on site immediately. But it'll come right down immediately too. It's, if you're doing Harry Potter meets, whatever. So that's the current process, and it'll probably change again over time.
I can't remember whether that was the case at the time or not, but.
Yeah, well, we used to not have any verification for new publishers.
Oh, right, probably then, wasn't it? Okay.
Yeah, so it was probably like that when you.
So on the whole DM's Guild side, how much sort of oversight does Wizard of the Coast have in the sort of day-to-day monitoring of titles, or looking at them, or possibly saying this one's problematic, or this one isn't, or this one is...
Right, almost none.
No?
Almost none, yeah. Our staff administer the site and help manage that. And honestly, the DM's Guild community is wonderful. And so our staff, our folks, our team will wake up and they'll be like, several reports of this title that had, what League of Legends artwork on the cover or whatever it would be. And then we just take it right down. So those sorts of things, the community actually helps police quite a bit, which is nice.
I do kind of feel like the community on DM's Guild feels... I don't know if tighter is the right word, but it feels to me a little tighter than the community of publishers in general.
Yes.
I don't know if that's true or not, but it's just more of a community, I suppose, in a way.
I believe so, because I think a lot of creators there they've been coming into it and starting to create and publish their first role-playing game more or less around the same time. So there's a bit of support community as they help each other figure out the ropes of how to do that best. And it's also a very tightly focused thing on this particular game and site and program. And so it's...
I guess it's kind of more individual focused than company focused as well, isn't it? So that would affect that.
Yes. Right. I'm going to follow this author's work rather than this company's work. And
that sort of puts me in mind of like another area where I have an absolutely massive library of things that I've acquired but I've barely scratched at, which is of course Steam. And they have like these curator queues, which are like various users. I'm not entirely sure how they pick them. Suggest and say, oh, you like this sort of game. These are the sort of games that I like and that you maybe like as well. Is that something that would work at all in your model? Or?
Well, we're actually, yes, now that you say that, we're it won't be in the next update of the app that we do, but I mean, not unlike you know, if you use Steam, you're not only shopping on the web store, but you have a client that's kind of helping you manage the content you purchased. And in the same way, we found that we're doing a client now that helps people manage this content, right, and sort it on their computer and whatever. So one of the things that we do then naturally, an outgrowth of that, is that you can start creating collections, and that'll be a feature that comes up in the next iteration of the app to come. Would be, okay, this is my weekly, awfully cheerful engine game. I'm going to curate the titles in my library that I need for this night's game, and that'll be a separate collection that I can easily bring up at any time. And
or even just be able to say, well, I've downloaded all these maps.
Yep.
I don't need to download them again. That would help me out.
Yeah, there you go. Go grab our client and you'll get it all, and then you can sort them just as you please.
Tell you one thing I've used DriveThru before in the past, which I haven't done in a number of years now, but with a couple of adventure paths we did subscriptions. But they weren't really subscriptions because we kind of had to use the functionality that DriveThruRPG had at the time.
Yes.
So we'd just take a sort of $99 payment and say you'll get this entire adventure path over the next couple of years. So I guess it's kind of a proto-subscription sort of thing.
A bit,
yes. Have you ever given any thought to subscription models on DriveThru? Because I think that's something I would make use of, definitely.
Yes. So there's that particular subscription tool you're talking about is something that James had started at RPG Now, and then when we merged it, that functionality came in. But it was something that not a lot of publishers used and was a bit difficult to support. The challenges we have with this is that we don't want to put ourselves in the place of being like a Kickstarter where people are giving money and then the content provider may or may not ever deliver the content.
Right, so yes.
Not that you would ever leave your subscribers holding the bag, Russ, but we have to account for who's using this tool and are they going to just collect a bunch of money and leave, and that sort of thing. And then we have customers coming and asking us for refunds, and
that makes sense.
And we want to keep that customer buying everybody's content. So that's a little bit of a challenge for us. We prefer like a model where you have a big bundle. And then a new title gets added to the bundle. And so if you've got a bundle of 4 titles that are all in the same game product line and somebody's bought all those titles before, when you add a new title to the bundle, they'll only pay the price of the new title to get it all. So it's just a slightly better way, perhaps.
So you're not double buying stuff.
No, you're never.
Makes sense.
Never double buying it.
That sounds useful.
Yeah.
I do notice that they update as well, so that is quite good.
Yes.
Like, I'm assuming with
that's actually something I wish our publishers would take more advantage of, Peter, because a lot of times publishers will update a file, but they won't even use the little. I was discussing with our staff. We need to make it mandatory that the publisher fills in the reason they're updating the file, and don't let them off the page until they fill something.
No, I was trying to think what you meant there for a second. Yeah, it's a little box where it says there has been an update to this title, and there's some default text in there, isn't there? And publishers probably
there's default text.
Publishers probably use that.
And then the customer's like, "Well, do I bother downloading this update or not?"
Just take out the default text and don't let the page go through unless there's something in there. That should solve the problem.
So I think that's our next step.
Or maybe to make it life easier for the publishers, just say, various typos.
Yes, here's your
so I can say what
5 pre-filled reasons, and then or an open response. There you go. You're a good user interface designer, Peter.
you can send your invoice in later.
That's right. Exactly.
It's all right. There you go. Just so I can get the benefits.
But what I really love the titles that a publisher releases and then continually updates. And this happens a lot on DM's Guild, actually, where the initial title is released. There's lots of discussion about the title, and people in the community are suggesting anything from typo corrections to rule modifications to things that are imbalanced.
See, I wouldn't want to do that because I personally, and I can't speak for anybody else, I would feel like I'm not releasing a final product. Then I'm releasing a beta, and people are beta testing it, and I'm updating it, which is which is a fine thing to do. You can do it, and video game companies do it all the time. Fine, if you want to do that, but personally, I don't think I'd be comfortable with it myself.
I think it's a different set of people, though, because everyone is a publisher.
I guess if you're really clear that it's a beta, and people are buying into that fact, I guess.
That's right.
Yeah.
Because no matter how much playtesting you do as a publisher, it's just you're never going to playtest, with hundreds of groups. Yes. And then once that playtest feedback broadly comes in, you have an opportunity to make some improvements.
We're doing a public playtest program for something at the moment, which has got thousands of people doing it, and
awesome.
The problem is the feedback you get is very much
the data.
Yeah, but it's also from people who play in a manner that it didn't even occur to you that someone might take your game and do this with it. And then you have to incorporate that into your design because you would understand there's a whole bunch of people that will do that. And I have to accommodate that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right.
And any particular game isn't going to be everything to everybody. I think one of the we were talking earlier about how the hobby's expanding, and certainly D&D 5 is a big part of that. But just the actual art form has come so far in the 30 plus years that I've been involved with it professionally that you have these amazing you've probably heard of the game Dread where you have the Jenga tower right, like things like that are just like really novel, and then the GM-less games, and the there's so many ways this hobby is going to different genres.
Dread is one of those examples of a game where the system matches the genre perfectly. Because I know people say system doesn't matter. You can make D&D do anything or whatever. But you cannot get that sense of tension that you get with Dread without a Jenga tower.
No.
Right. The system really matters, and it really palpably affects the room.
And like different GMs will take it and do something useful. I played in a Halloween game where we had to basically have the choice of either we were playing in the dark, and we could either switch our torches on, which meant the killer was more likely to be able to find us, or we had to pull Jenga tiles in the dark. I have to say, I completely overestimated my skills at Jenga for them. But that was on me.
I can't even pull them in the light, let alone the dark. I'm so bad.
Right. Yeah. So anyway, I think the hobby's just as an art form, and I love having a vantage point to see a lot of this stuff come through in all the different ways the hobby's advancing.
So what do you think? Do you think that's partly due to the growing diversity of the hobby? So when you get different types of people starting to create, you end up with totally different approaches to design. And then, of course, all that cross-pollinates and stuff, and the whole hobby evolves en masse.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that sort of brings me back to where I was sort of headed with the front page thing. Like, obviously, you're a commercial business. You're there to make money. You're there to sell PDFs. But had you considered like maybe like a slot or two for different games, ones that are just like so almost an editor's pick,
right?
Although that's obviously like a
exactly right
Sisyphean.
Well, we did actually just that. We started a staff's pick program about a year ago now, partly to help highlight some titles that we think are just really cool.
Then you get shouted at by people who never get picked, don't you, presumably?
I know, yes.
Yeah, so it's another one of those kind of
the other 199,000 titles that we didn't pick.
Yeah.
But we've got to find those sorts of ways to highlight those types of things and bring them to more people's attention. We're doing a whole program now with like changing over our recommender system to a big, better neural net sort of, machine learning
is really
thing.
bad at it for me, so I don't know how good that's going to be. And Amazon's even worse.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
How many barbecues does it think I want to buy? I am an avid barbecue collector. I mean,
I mean, for me, it's like, well, he's recommended me a load of books. I mean, I wouldn't go on more books. But no, that makes more sense.
I think my favourite thing about DriveThru is because it's so successful and it's kind of a victim of its own success in this sense, because it's so busy and because you've got, as you say, 17,000 publishers uploading over 50 odd titles a day.
Over 200,000.
Yeah, you upload a product and you're on the first page, and then 7 minutes later you've disappeared.
You're gone.
Well, I guess there's nothing
600 titles a week, so it's almost 100 titles a day.
Yeah.
Now that's across all marketplaces, but it's still.
So that's got to be a challenge as well. Then, so highlighting new products when you've got so many new products is going to be really, really difficult to do. I can't even think how to approach that.
My advice to any new publisher or creator is to make sure, one, do your first product very small, so that you just get your feet wet with the process of publishing anything, and two, make sure you're probably trying to go really narrow with what you're trying to do and find some niche.
Give yourself a niche, basically.
Yeah. I mean, it's like it might be an idea to do your first product as this absolute world-spanning colossus where you've rewritten a complete system and setting and everything. And it's like going to be a massive book. But if no one's ever heard of it, you're going to have to charge like, what, $50 for it? Yeah. It's like $50. I don't know what it is.
It's difficult if you haven't got a platform already to advertise it, isn't it? So
yes.
Which is precisely where what Steve is saying comes in, which is where you put out things, you can see the quality of the work.
Yes.
And it's like you build up like an audience. In much the same way as you've been doing with your Kickstarters.
Right.
Like people have been like saying, oh, this is really good. And then that means that they want to get it. It's almost like leaving a trail of breadcrumbs almost, it feels. Is that what you're getting at, Steve?
Yes, a bit. It's also, so one thing is, yes, people aren't going to take the risk on you with a $50 product if you're coming out of nowhere. But you're less likely to. The other thing is that people underestimate how many different skill sets it really takes to be a publisher. And so if you just have a knack for writing, that's
great, not really being a publisher. That's a different skill, isn't it? Yeah,
exactly. You need the visuals, you need a little bit of business acumen, you need some marketing, and you have to put all
project management.
People think, I want to write something.
It's like you have to be a good project manager because unless you're doing it all yourself, you're marshalling a group of people. There was something I did want to ask you, actually. I don't know if you have this figured at hand. Do you have any idea what the average number of products per publisher is on the site? Because I know how many I've got on there, roughly, and it's like in the region of 600 or 700. It's ridiculous. It's a ridiculous number. And I was just thinking, that can't be typical.
No, definitely not. I mean, we could just take the 200,000 active titles, public titles. Right. I mean, we have way more titles that are private, by the way, but 200. We have over 300,000 total title listings, but a lot of those are left private.
I've got about 24 private, just on my publishing
so 200,000 divided by 17.
For people like who don't know what you're talking about, including me, what's a private title?
Just one that's not available for sale. So
okay. Right.
It exists in the system, but someone can't come along and buy it.
Right.
But it's there.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly.
They can't even see it.
Can't even see it. So, for example, if Russ is doing a Kickstarter and has the title ready, well, that's going to go out to backers first.
So it's set on private for about 2 months, and then you hit the button to make it live.
Thank you so much.
Because you want to get all this stuff done in advance. You don't want to be doing it at the last minute. So basically, when I launch a Kickstarter, the product is on. It's not only on DriveThruRPG. I've also had to put copies through, held them in my hands. I said, right, I've got it in my hand. I now feel comfortable launching this Kickstarter. which is basically my philosophy.
That's a very sound conservative approach, so I applaud you for that.
Yeah, I mean, it's worked for me because people, over time, they realise that your Kickstarters are delivering really, really quickly every single time.
Yes.
And then when you launch another one just 2 weeks later, they're like, okay, but I did get the last one within 2 weeks. And it builds, and it builds, and it builds.
Yes. Exactly. Yeah, that's important to do. So, so if what would that be? 200,000 divided by 17? That'd be about,
call it divided by 20.
12
so
or
about
so, 12 titles average.
Okay, yeah.
So
I'm way above average on that.
You're definitely in the couple.
But I have been doing it for nearly 20 years, or however long you've been there, so.
I know.
I was one of the first.
Ian Publishing was one of the very first.
Yeah, RPG Now. I think it was Monty Cook, a couple of others, and we were right there, right at the start, I think.
Exactly.
It's going back a long time.
So, it is.
I've got a question, and you may not know the answer, and it's okay if you don't, but one of the things which is always a head-scratcher is pay what you want versus either a $1 or even a $5 title.
Yes.
Right. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, an interesting way to relate that is when DM's Guild first launched, there was a real wave of pay-what-you-want titles. And a lot of creators were doing that as their choice to price them pay what you want. And then over time, they started to realize that they're not really getting the best remuneration for their work, and so they started to change over to a fixed price. And the pay what you want, I think, has a very specific place in somebody's strategy for a product mix, but it's not going to be everybody's most common choice. There are a lot of people who just treat it as a free title.
I've experimented. I've dabbled with it a bit and not had good results. So
So if there's a title that is mostly for marketing purposes, but you will get some people supporting that effort, then it's a good choice. But normally it's probably better to go free or a fixed price.
Right. Okay, so either go free or put a fixed but low price.
Right. And we continue to experiment a lot with everything. This is a lot. I mean, when you talk about e-commerce sites, you talk about A/B testing, if you're familiar with that, where you show two different versions. And so we do a lot of testing around things like, well, how do we present pay what you want titles to communicate as clearly as possible that, it'd be really nice if you supported this publisher with more than $0. And that helps, but it doesn't radically turn the dial.
I wonder if just changing the terminology from pay what you want, which kind of half says pay nothing to me, to support this publisher or something, or...
Well, and we use support this publisher as sort of placeholder text for where you enter your amount. And we're like with the new site design, we've just recently spent a lot of time designing the pay what you want look for that site. And we're going with some radio buttons so you can more easily select some different fixed price contributions. It'll default to whatever the publisher's recommended contribution price is instead of
it does work in some trade. If you look at Patreon, for example, which is kind of a pay what you want subscription system for a lot of people, it does work.
Even on Patreon, Russ, it seems like people have a fixed amount that they're going to contribute every time.
Usually.
It's like the concept of anchoring, I feel, comes into place, which is where you would say, you should pay $10 for this title. And so say, well, we pay more than $5. And it's like, okay, we can pay $5.
If you say, this dollar is worth $10, how much do you want to pay? Is a little different to just saying how much you want to pay. Because if you just go to me, how much you want to pay, I'll say nothing. If you say, this is worth $10, how much do you want to pay? I'll go, I don't know, $5? Because you started me at 10.
$5, $1.
Right.
But if you start at 5, right, end up at 1 or 0.
And we're also considering doing something where there is a floor, where you have to pay at least $5, but you can choose to pay more and contribute and support the publisher. Again, the terminology, then do you have pay what you want and pay what you want, but at least this, and then fixed price. And so we want to make sure that it stays clear to the customer, too, what's what.
Yeah, sort of a bit like almost the Kickstarter, the stretch goals. Like, you pay this much for this product, but you can unlock sort of like not
more
DLC, but
that's
that
right.
sort of like extra content.
Well, it's another
that's
place that some publishers and creators use the file update system, is that they will update their product listing periodically to say, okay, I need this many more buyers, and then I'll be adding this extra chapter or appendix of content.
And
it becomes a bit like a stretch goal.
Yeah, Russ, what was the name of the guy that you really liked that did... Well, he was here talking about Morkborg and his project, and basically he was doing that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Still on this pricing concept, though. So, pay what you want is one thing, but have you got any sort of, as someone whose primary business is selling role-playing games and role-playing game supplements, have you got any thoughts on, because you leave the pricing in the hands of the publishers, that you can charge what you want, but have you got any thoughts on what, do publishers tend to undervalue their work? Do they tend to, because I get a sense that people do, but...
Yes. Right. Yes, I'd say in general that's true. We have released a couple of blogs, so we have a one blog shelf if you want to, and we have historically put out a couple of blog posts about, and it's mostly focused for publishers and people who want to get into publishing. And I should, if I can, I'll plug also, we've recently started a Twitch channel, so Twitch TV /OneBookShelf, which airs every Thursday and has good content now for sort of Publisher 101 stuff. And among the topics we like to talk about are price, as pedestrian as that sounds to the creative soul. I
think this is kind of it's a two-pronged thing, though. Is if you if you start charging low, you're normalizing low prices, and then customers get used to those low prices, and then when someone charges what honestly is a realistic price for their work.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
The customers
put off by that because they perceive that as being too high when it's not.
Right.
So I think that's a problem.
Yeah, it is. So generally we found that there's certain price points that are attractive. So for example, there's almost no reason to charge $1. You might as well charge $1.99 or $2 for even for a very small work. And then after that, you probably want to jump up to the $5 point. After you go above $20, we don't have as many data points because there's not that many titles that sell above that, but it seems like your total revenue will start to flat curve. So if you start pricing it above $20, you might find similar total revenue, but you're selling to fewer people at a higher price. So there's a bit of a consideration there around exceeding that price point.
So the current cap is realistically $20.
Yes, but
I mean, you could go up, obviously.
And Monty Cook, as one example, I mean, they put out some fantastic work that has just a lot of heart and soul and time and money put into it. And they charge appropriately for that. Yeah.
It feels like they're positioning themselves as a premium brand.
Yeah, it's a premium product. And they're putting out for the PDF, they'll charge what customers would see maybe, or some will complain is a very high price for a PDF. And I look at it, and having been a publisher in the past, I know the blood, sweat, and tears that go into creating something that nice. And I'm like, you're getting a bargain. Yeah. So,
we get a lot of people who think, if a hardcover costs $40, the PDF should be half that. But you do get some publishers that might charge $40 for the PDF as well. Would you recommend that, or would you say stick to the lower point?
Right. I think 40 is, other than for very few works in the industry, that's quite a premium price, and you're probably going to get better total revenue if you go lower than that. I mean, as a publisher, I would rather, if I'm going to make, say I'm going to make some $1,000 selling a PDF, I have a slight preference towards having sold that to more people than fewer people. I'd rather sell it for more people at a slightly lower price than fewer people because I'm just building audience that way. And
bigger customer base, exactly. Yeah. And then if you produce like a supplement or something, that means there are more people who are interested in buying that.
Exactly right. And then you have a better model going forward. So, but in general, it is true that people tend to undervalue their titles. Yes. There are exceptions. There are people who come out of nowhere with some title that's priced and are like, okay, $20 for your 40-page PDF that you're a new publisher. And I don't know if that's going to work for you. But
I mean, if it's a lot of artwork, like they're selling like pages of artwork, it's like, I understand through the education I have received on this podcast that is actually a really good deal.
Yes, exactly. If it's a lot of art by Claudio, then,
if Claudio Prudas brings out a 40-page artwork for $20, it's like, buy. Yeah.
I'm just going to call up a figure here. I'm just using your sales report here. I looked this up the other day and I've forgotten what it was. It was how much money I've made for you, ever.
Okay. Well, thank you, Russ. I'll have another cup of coffee now.
Right, there we go. So I've sold 90,988 units.
Ooh.
Gross sales is $578,000. Earnings is $297. So let's call that 300.
But
so I've made you $300,000.
No, because you're missing your print costs.
True.
The way we work on, just for the audience's sake, the way things work on DriveThru when a publisher sets up a book for print is that if they charge $20 for that print book, and the print cost of that is, say, $12 or something, then when that sale transacts, we take the $12 out of the sale, and then we split the $8 with the publisher.
But so it sounds better when I say that I personally made you personally $300,000.
Yes. I wish you had. So let's go with that version.
That's a nice house you're in.
That's
But no, I mean, it just goes to show that over time, though, it does add up, doesn't it? It does add up.
That's right. Yeah. Well, you could probably reverse engineer your earnings amount there and do a little math and say, well, if that's your 70% or something, then what was our 30% of that or whatever?
Yeah. Now, I've always been super happy, selling via DriveThru. Tell you what I am also, which I love, is the customer service contact I've got, Meredith, is amazing. I mean, please tell her I said that. She is amazing. Every time I've had to deal with her, and it's been quite a lot of times over the last God knows how many years. She's always been really quick to reply, really professional, really friendly, fixed the issue or dealt with the issue really quickly, and it's just absolutely perfect. And A+ customer service.
I'll be sure to let her know, or tell her to tune in and hear it from me directly.
Yeah, if you're listening, Meredith, you can totally bring this up in your next performance review.
And also ask Steve for a pay rise as well.
Wait a minute.
He said it. No,
Meredith is a gem. She's a superstar. Yeah, we're very lucky to have her. The one of the things that we really do focus on a lot is that we have people there to help. We collect our customer. I mean, I'd invite anybody to go out on Google and Reddit and wherever and say DriveThruRPG customer service and see what customers say about when they have an experience and contact our customer service department, because it was a Sunday and I didn't think anyone would respond, and I got a response in 5 minutes, and to a degree, we look at ourselves as just sort of a platform. We're here to help publishers transact, and one of those is we have a customer service team that's sort of shared among all publishers in a weird way. So, which is running Kickstarters. That dealing with backers is time consuming.
It's interesting. It's an experience for sure.
Yes, a lot of times positive. A lot of times very positive.
Lots of happy people.
The odd time.
I did get someone.
I think you had some complaints that they sent you sent them their books.
Well, someone did do that,
How dare you send them my books so quickly?
There was one person who, so I had a Kickstarter back in 2016 or something, 5 years ago. And I sent him over that time 12 times. We contacted him asking for his address, because obviously Kickstarter doesn't give you the address. They can't share you can't ship anything to them until you got the address. They have to physically give it to you each time. So we over 5 years constantly asking for his address, no reply, silence. He paid us. I was thinking, do I refund this guy? What do I do? 5 years later, suddenly he gives us his address. 5 years later, suddenly, and then the very next day, he gives us his address, and 8 hours after giving us his address, starts sending us emails about how long we were taking to ship his books. I was like, what? I'm not even out of bed yet. It's you do understand that we can see the date that you sent us that address, and it was 8 hours ago.
Right. There's timestamps on these things. Yeah, we have a few funny things like that when you run a site like ours, where you see different things. Publishers or customers will tell you one thing, and you look at a log, and it's like, this isn't matching. I wonder. But few and far between. We have a lovely hobby and a lovely group of people in the hobby, and
yes. So we have gone over as well. So you should.
It was lovely.
Be so interesting.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's your fault.
Yeah.
I mean,
nice meeting you.
Oh, well, let's hope the listeners think so. E-commerce sites aren't usually the most thrilling things, but it has given me a nice vantage point on the business. That's and I feel blessed and lucky that I get to make a professional life out of this business and this hobby and this art form.
I've really enjoyed talking to you, Steve. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Apparently, I now have to read this to you. This is the official podcast of Morris's unofficial tabletop RPG news, which you can find at enworld.org. You can find show notes at morris.podbean.com or wherever you found the podcast. If you feel like they deserve it, you can support the show on Patreon. In return, you will receive exclusive bonus content. Just go to patreon.com/Morris. If you're interested in his babbling nonsense, you can follow @Morris on the Twitter. Send your emails to morrispodcast@gmail.com. Not all of your emails, just the ones you want us to see. That's it. I'm bored now. You can go away. Shoo, off you go. Goodbye. Get out of here.
Yeah, I think that'll do it. Run report. Okay, let's have a look. I've probably expected something wrong.
But it is over quite a number of years, isn't it?
This page is taking bloody ages to load. It's because
it's
we
have so much history. Yeah. Our whole site database load just spikes thanks to Russ running a report here.